Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, Even If It's on One Check. I am a student, and I took some time off to focus on my studies. I found myself in a pinch and needed some cash, so I looked for a quick-serving job close to my apartment. I found one at a pretty low-volume mum and pop pizza place. The manager was your typical bully. She liked to let everyone know she was the one in charge. And she loved to get on someone's case if they didn't put the pepper shaker back on the table in the right position. Any small thing she had the opportunity to reprimand someone for, she took it. She also loved to humiliate people. I was new, and instantly the staff really seemed to like me. I was overall usually in a good mood and had a lot of inside jokes with most of the staff. The tabs for the tables were handwritten, so I liked to abbreviate things to make the process quicker. If things were on one check, I didn't feel a need to separate seats, as they were going on one check anyways, so why should it matter? As the checks are handwritten, the cashier was the manager, and they were in charge of ringing up the receipts and totals of the checks on the one register. I had a table of 3, on one check, so I wrote it on one piece of paper, all under one seat. She calls me over, loudly in front of the whole staff to embarrass me. Hey man! What have I told you about separate seats? That they're on one check. Well, all seats need to be separate. Even if they're on one check? It seems kind of like a waste of time since it's handwritten and all. Yes. I need to know. Each seat. Separate. It's not that difficult. So for the rest of the day, she would patronize me and clap each time I would separate every 2 top tables I had. At the end of one shift, a cook could see how crappy she was treating me. He pulled me in the back and said, "Hey, I think you did a great job today." He was a nice dude. I left the back smiling. 10 minutes later, she told me she needed to talk to me. I was assuming she was going to tell me I did a great job separating checks. But no, this was not on her mind. She said the tables looked dirty and I need to put the napkins on the right side of the tables, not the left. This was the moment I was done with her. The next day, I was the closing server. I was alone, just me, her, and the kitchen. It was a super slow night. Then we had a large party come in. 14 people, no problem. The entire restaurant was empty and I was the only server. I got their orders, then took a seat. As they were eating, I took my sweet time separating every single order by hand. I made sure to use my very best handwriting, spelling out each individual word, no shorthand tonight. 20 minutes after closing time, they still hadn't asked for their checks. I was in no rush that night, but my manager was. "Can I get their checks, please? I'm ready to go." "Sure. No problem." I approached the table. "Hey guys. We are wrapping up. No rush, but I have your checks. I separated them all. Are you all separate, or on one? Put us on one." Now, at this point, I could have just stapled all 14 checks together and asked for the calculated total and asked the manager to simply type the total and tax. But since she was so hell-bent on separate checks, I delivered 14 separate checks for her to calculate up herself. All separate? Seriously? Sure. It took her about 5 minutes to calculate it. After gathering them up, I add the separate totals, staple them, and circle the total. I hand the check over and let them hang out for another 15 minutes before handing over the payment. I go and swipe the card and tell them to have a good night. The manager is in charge of closing out the final payments. She sees it's on one check. That was on one check? Seriously? I know. They changed their minds. It would have been so much easier for me to have just put it on one piece of paper, am I right? The glare she gave me was priceless. I cleaned the table off with a grin on my face. I quit 2 weeks later. The next story is called, Find Another Way to Do It. I worked for an insurance company as a total loss adjuster. This was back in January. When a car is totaled, it simply means that it's uneconomical to repair or the state guidelines won't allow for it to be repaired. 90% of the time, people don't want to hassle with jumping through the hoops of getting a salvage title, handling the car, repairs, and stuff. So the insurance company, although not required to, will typically handle the wrecked car for you and move it to the yard and auction it. Well, an inbound call comes in. He immediately starts berating me and is upset that his claim hasn't been paid yet. He had a nice 2014 Mercedes that was totaled from a collision accident. The car was worth about $30,000 before the accident and it was sitting in our salvage yard, awaiting the proper paperwork from him. I apologize for the delays, but it seems that we haven't received the paperwork that was sent to you 3 weeks ago. Did you receive the packet? I received it, but I'm busy. I can't take the time to get the documents signed and notarized. This is ridiculous. Why can't you just pay my claim? Because the vehicle's final resting place will be in New York, we must have these documents to be able to properly salvage your vehicle and pay your claim. Plus, we also have to remain in compliance with your state's Department of Insurance. It's been 3 weeks. Again, we need those documents back, signed and notarized to be able to release payment first. We overnighted them to you and even included a free overnight return label for your convenience. You're my insurance company, you have to do it. I won't be bothered to find a notary and ship these docs back to you. I'm a hotshot job title, I have more important things to do than you, someone who works in a call center. Sir, we can't sign your name on your behalf. That's called forgery and it's illegal. Look, if it's too much trouble, I can help you find a notary nearby with flexible hours and I'll even call the shipping carrier to help you arrange for the documents to be picked up from your house. But New York does not allow us to circumvent this process. No. I already said this is your problem, you deal with it. But I can't handle your wrecked vehicle properly and pay you without these documents. Well, you'll have to find another way to do it. And with that, he hangs up. The caller was represented by an attorney for injuries, so I thought I'd call them to see if they could help. I speak with the receptionist, who was apologetic for the client's behavior and said he's been a nightmare to work with. He talks down to the staff, is uncooperative, and she apologized numerous times that I even had to talk to him. I explained the situation and said that I was hoping that even though they're not representing him for property damage, that maybe the attorney could talk some sense into the man. We'll try, but we're not even eager to help him with his injury case because he's such a jerk. The attorney was unsuccessful in getting the man's cooperation, so I had no choice but to return his damaged, inoperable property back to him. I schedule a tow truck to move the wrecked car back to his address on file. I checked back on the call log the next day and sure enough, his wrecked car had been moved back to his home, parked in the common driveway, immobile and without keys. Blocking his roommate's vehicles in, might I add. The man has called in a total of 7 times to complain, escalate, and get the vehicle moved. One inexperienced representative tried to move it but I was monitoring the file and cancelled her tow. The man called in several more times and each adjuster's notes referred to my documented account of how uncooperative he was and refused to take the vehicle back until we got his documents. The man stated that the address on file wasn't actually his, it's his landlord's house where he rents a room and he needs the car moved. His landlord wasn't happy and was threatening him with legal action. Another adjuster told him that we will no longer use our resources to help him with his wrecked vehicle and that he caused this mess by simply not sending the required documents back. If he needed the vehicle moved that desperately, he would have to pay to tow it and store it at his own expense. As I mentioned earlier, insurance companies are not required to handle the vehicle in most states. It was the man's property and in order to indemnify him, we did still owe him a good chunk of his $30,000. Since he opted to essentially keep the vehicle by way of not cooperating, we must also deduct the salvage value of his wrecked car. This represents the amount we anticipated to receive for the wrecked car at auction. That was a whopping $8,000 of his $30,000 settlement. So not only did he have a wrecked car sitting in his driveway, now we've also reduced his settlement by $8,000. Not more than a week later, we got his documents back. But it took another week after that to get his vehicle picked back up. Since we were now in possession of the vehicle, we also did pay him his full settlement in the end, but he ate the costs of moving the vehicle around unnecessarily. Car accidents suck, I get it. We were trained not to take things personally, and I often get the brunt of people's frustration all day, every day. I am empathetic and try to be as helpful and accommodating as possible because I'm human. A total loss can definitely turn things upside down. 99% of the time, I can de-escalate someone and it doesn't turn out this way, but there's always that one person who has to act like a jerk. The last story is called, Banned from Section 8. This happened when I was a manager at a pizza delivery store in my town. Let me tell you just a little bit about my town. It is tiny. It used to be called a city, but in the past few years, they changed it to town. I have no idea why, but if that doesn't scream small rural area, I don't know what does. That being said, the store wasn't all that busy compared to other stores. This left us really slow at night and all the staff we would need was a closing manager and a closing driver from 8 on. To be honest, closing is the worst part of the job. Anyone that's worked in food and closed knows that nothing is worse than those late-night customers and the hassle of getting home at 3. But that's one thing about this small town store I loved, we would slow down around 8 and I could slowly close and clean the store with only leaving the essentials until we actually closed at midnight. This was awesome because it allowed the driver and myself to leave as early as 5 minutes past on a fairly regular basis. Anyone that has worked in delivering food knows where to expect tips and where not to expect tips. Your local Section 8 housing is typically a dry spot. If you walk out with 2 quarters, a dime and a couple of pennies, consider yourself lucky. But there is something very special about our local Section 8. That is the complex police. They have this guy suited up and looks like a legit officer. Except he has no authority. But they do give him a Jeep that has blue lights and says apartment police on it. This guy, for whatever reason, has it out for delivery drivers from all the pizza places in town. I know because we sometimes hired ex-workers from the other stores and they know him on a first-name basis. If the guy didn't look like a psychopath, I would potentially hire him because he takes his job so seriously. The Section 8 driveway has a few speed bumps as well as posted 5 miles per hour signs that are handwritten. My main full-time driver gives me a call in the middle of the shift one day and says that the guy has pulled him over for speeding in the complex. My driver says the police wants to talk to the manager, so I get on the phone with him and he tells me that I need to come to the complex and talk with him as well as write up my employee. I told him I can't leave the store and you can't detain my driver. He knows I'm right. He told me that if he catches him again he will call the police. I just roll my eyes and end the call. So the day goes on and the driver and I laugh it off. The next day, we are working together again as usual because most of my workers are students that drive part-time and can't close. So around 8 o'clock, we get an order for Section 8. Sure enough, 10 minutes go by and I'm getting a call. My driver parked in the parking lot to make a delivery and when he came back out of the apartment, he saw the guy sitting in his car and they made eye contact. The guy immediately pulls up behind my driver's car and has him blocked in. He said he's detaining him until the real police show up because he's parked without a parking permit. At this point, I think this is a joke because yesterday he may or may not been speeding. The guy definitely does not have a radar gun, but just how mad could this guy be? So I tell my driver to just wait for the police and talk to them. Maybe a half hour goes by and my driver gets back to the store to report to me what happened. The police did not fine him for parking without a permit, they did not write him a speeding ticket. But the real police told the complex police that he could ban him from coming back to the property, even if it's for work. So we now have a written notice not to take delivery orders to the worst customers in town as well as to never be near this douchebag fake police guy again. I know I'm lurking on how bad of a guy this complex policeman was. But just know that the people in Section 8 housing would always call last minute to order food 5 minutes before closing and then call back and complain so they could get free credit and use it the next night. All without leaving a tip. This was infuriating because we knew that they were abusing the system as well as wasting our drivers' time. On top of all that, we have to take out all the ingredients and use clean dishes to prepare the order and rewash and just do a bunch of extra work, keeping us there for at least another half hour as well as waiting for the driver to get back from the delivery to add the money to the till to prepare the nightly deposit. All in all, late night orders are the worst. That being said, with our new permit, when my closing driver and I get a call late night from Section 8 to ruin our night, we can say, "Sorry, your complex police has banned our driver from delivering to you." What's that? You'll just pick it up? Sorry, pickup closes at 10. Sorry for the inconvenience, have a nice night. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.